FBI's Arctic frost exposed almost 100 GOP groups swept up in what Senator Grassley blasts as a political witch hunt. Blaze News, The Mandate, starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage, joined as always by our editor-in-chief, Matthew Peterson.
Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day to all.
And our D.C. bestie, Chris Bedford. How's it going?
I'm doing great. What's it like in Texas? Is it cold and rainy? I like cold and rainy.
It is not. It is particularly warm today, warmer than I thought it would be when I went outside at lunchtime. And I went, oh, no, it is still summer in Texas. And you know what? Things are still hot right now with the FBI. We are getting what is billed as national security investigation. It now looks like, wait a minute, government overreach? Could it be? The deep state was weaponizing federal power to target and investigate its political enemies.
On that political list was one of Charlie Kirk's group's Turning Point USA. In other words, Arctic frost wasn't just a case to politically investigate Trump. It was the vehicle by which partisan FBI agents and Department of Justice prosecutors could achieve their partisan ends and improperly investigate the entire Republican political apparatus.
So Arctic frost that he's talking about there, these are unclassified documents that have been released by the FBI. And this began in April of 2022. It went on for about half of the year, but it targeted 92 Republican-linked groups and individuals, including the Republican National Committee, Trump-affiliated PACs, and, as he said there, Turning Point USA, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, I want everyone in the audience to think about this in terms of what just happened, right, a week ago today. Charlie Kirk is assassinated in broad daylight. And when you think about the investigation that needs to be underway by the FBI now, right, think about what they did not very long ago. Because this was the FBI and the DOJ working together with other federal agencies to surveil and investigate what? First off, it's wide. It's broad. This is looking at people in multiple states throughout the country. This is looking at basically anyone who was a political opponent. That included many Trump-related organizations. So you're talking about a whole raft of organizations related to the Trump administration, and this is if we can pull that up there. This is a broad investigation, in other words, of political opponents. So not only do we have numerous Trump enterprises listed here, targeted, we also have, guess what? Turning Point USA. Turning Point USA is on this document, along with J6 money, whatever the hell that means, right? So, of course, we know everyone going to J6 is targeted. And this means that, these organizations and people are being investigated and can be surveilled by the federal government. This is the kind of widespread activity that was common under the last administration.
So is national security, as what they bill as national security, Chris, is this just actually going through and targeting political enemies again?
Yeah, essentially, unfortunately. Turns out the libertarians were right about some things. But so put this into context, put it into a timeline. This operation was launched in the spring of 2022, which is basically geared up around the time that President Trump was getting ready to come back and win. And President Biden wasn't doing so hot in the polls. And Vice President Kamala Harris wasn't doing so hot in the polls. Look at the 2 years previous to the deep state, essentially. Timothy Thibault, the known anti-Trump FBI agent leading this, 13 field offices going after this. The 2 years before that is when they decided we're going to let the civilians handle this. And they had done a inquisitor's job, an English propaganda version of the Spanish Inquisition's job on this sort of thing. The 2 years previously, after January 6th, the January 6th riot, every single person remotely connected to the Republican Party, from the accountants to the tech guys, were hauled into basements in the Capitol and questioned over and over and over again. And they weren't being questioned about riots. They weren't being questioned about illegal activity. They were being questioned about fundraising, about where they get their money from, over who funds the GOP. This is what the Democratic committees empowered by Liz Cheney, were going after and digging into. I know multiple people who had absolutely nothing to do with that riot, who weren't even there, who were just hauled in because they were trying to do a fact-finding mission to help sink the GOP. They were searching for crimes. Now look at the 4 years before that. With James Comey, the first half of it, the FBI set about trying to knock down Trump, knock him out, take care of him, saddle him with all kinds of conspiracies, knock off members of his administration, raid different homes of people after they left for the entire 4 years of that administration. So at this point, by 2022, we're on year 6 of FBI tag teaming with Democrats, switching on and off to attack and undermine president, then former president, and now current president. Once again, the once and future president. This whole thing is part of the reason, and you start to see why they were doing it, right? Because when Trump got back into power, he finds it. When Trump got back into power, he found the original documents. When Trump got back into power, he found all of the receipts for all of their misdeeds. And the key to making sure that was never found was Trump either going to prison and never coming back to power, and then maybe some other goofy Republican, some return to normalcy comes back and just allows them to get away with the entire damn thing. That's what they were banking on because they are guilty as sin.
That is such a key point because this is Christopher Wray's FBI, and we can bring in Special Counsel Jack Smith. He's the one who is leading all of this, right? These are the greatest hits of the names on the left. And Matt, we see Tulsi Gabbard right now and others that are like, oh, by the way, we're finding classified documents that are in burn bags, in deep hidden closets within all of these different administrations. So if this is what we've found so far, right? And to Chris's point, they didn't want this to happen. They didn't want Trump to win again, but they haven't done, thankfully, a good enough job of getting rid of the actual evidence. And there are still whistleblowers that are coming forward and saying these things are wrong. If this is what we already know, I mean, the level of lawlessness that we will possibly never know about. But the fact that it's the weaponized government that we see over and over and over again.
Yeah, and here's the thing. We can't become numb to this, right? I mean, as Chris said, the damn libertarians are right about something every once in a while. And I mean, the conspiracy theorists were correct. I mean, you have a thoroughly corrupt bureaucratic system. Doesn't mean there's not still great people in that system. There are. There are people, even among the bureaucracy and frontline people, who are still good people who want to do the right thing. But you have to clean out this entire thing. This is the entire apparatus. Again, it's a pirate ship, right? Full of pirates who hate you when you come in on top and try to take it over. You got a clean house. And you have tens of thousands of people who have been trained now for a long time such that they think this is A-OK. They were perfectly willing to go along with investigating 92 Republican-linked groups, as Chris says, 2 years after the election to surveil and investigate political opponents of the sitting president. So this is not something that's acceptable. It's not something that we can allow to be normalized. And it's something that's going to require deep structural reform and getting tens of thousands of people out of there. I don't see any other way around it.
So, Chris, let's bring this back to the audience, everyday people, right? What's the risk for average Americans out there? Because this isn't just DC elites or super PACs or whatever. Like, this is the federalized government of the biggest superpower in the world.
There's a real risk, and we saw it under the Biden administration. And that's when I thought things were getting dangerous. Back when the quaint thinking of things like that being dangerous before open assassinations in broad daylight. But when the FBI started going after normal people, like the dad who defended his child at a pro-life rally, raided his house with guns drawn, when local Pennsylvania attorneys who are left wing as heck and largely anti-Catholic, refused to actually prosecute, the feds swooped in. When they started putting grandmas in prison for crossing their left wing rubrics or crossing Rubicon, I don't know, crossing the lines the left had established about where you're allowed to pray, that's when I realized this stuff was getting dangerous. When they started arresting people who had nothing to do with January 6th, which was bad enough, all the arrests they did, all the craziness, all the people they went after. But then when they started just arresting normal Christian Americans from the FBI, That's when I realized, oh, this is not just something that we have to worry about. This is a real threat to this country. It's a real threat to stability. I mean, I learned this in some of the readings that Dr. Peterson assigned me way back in the day, but the incredible danger that exists when one side of the country doesn't feel like the need to respect the laws or abide by them, and then the other side of the country that always did doesn't think the laws are able to protect them anymore. That's when you get to a boiling point as a country, and that's where the FBI and the Democrats were pushing things at 100 miles per hour.
Well, Mike, you're the editor-in-chief. We had on our website, Kash Patel. It's his greatest test. It's an article that you can go see at theblaze.com. And this is going to be a huge deal for Kash Patel and how people are going to view him as the director of the FBI. But can the FBI actually fix itself, right? When we look at how systemic all of these problems are, is it going to be able to just be one man that comes out there and fixes this?
Yeah, look, this is an enormous problem. So no matter who you put in charge of any of these agencies or departments, they have a Herculean task before them. They have to clean out the Aegean stables, to use the ancient Greek. You know what the stables were full of after centuries of use by horses. Hercules changed a river to wash it all away, wash all the filth away. Somehow you have to figure out how to do that. So this is a very difficult thing. Now, in Kash's case, look, I want to say I'm a huge supporter. I'm a huge fan. I wanted him to be confirmed. But I do think that you have critics on the right now looking at some of these agencies saying and pushing what are we going to do? What are we going to do to really change these things, to really reform the structure of these places? And so scrutiny is a good thing. And I think that we owe it to ourselves to have the best people in place. And we need to make sure that everyone is marching to the same drum to actually reform the FBI, because we don't have a lot of time. And it's a really, really serious business that we're discussing right now. So we need to see the plan for how the FBI is going to move forward and change itself so that this stuff never happens again.
Bedford, we'll give you the final word.
They need to use the agents. They need to use those agents. I was going to jump in there anyways. I'm such a piggy. You need to use the agents who are there, who worked on the inside. Those guys who I know, who were furious after January 20th, January 6th, when every single FBI officer in the entire agency would put on investigating January 6th. Doesn't matter if they're in human trafficking. Doesn't matter if they're organized crime. Doesn't matter if they're after fentanyl. Doesn't matter if they're after all kinds of narcotics or mass murderers. The number one priority for every agent in the entire country was made January 6th. So a lot of those guys didn't actually want to do it. But that's the way the FBI was. And those people who were inside, those career officers who retired in time and told their kids, don't follow in my footsteps, they're the ones that Kash Patel needs, much more than a couple outsiders to come in. They're the ones who can tell you where all the bodies are buried.
Yeah, lectern guys walking around the building the last couple of days. And our own J6er Steve Baker will be in town later next week. But Bedford, always appreciate it. Great stuff.
See you tomorrow.
When we come back, we'll be talking to somebody who absolutely loves the First Amendment, our friend David DeRogers over at Real Clear Politics. Next. Well, a huge thank you for watching and listening to the show. And Blaze TV exists because people like you refuse to settle for all of the endless spin that we know is out there with legacy media. But this has never been about one voice or one company. It's about a movement of people who refuse to sit on the sidelines, and we need to carry this mission forward. So when you subscribe, you're not just supporting a show, you're actually making sure that the truth has a platform today and for the next generation. You can join us at blazetv.com/BNT and get $20 off right now. That's as low as $8 a month for an annual plan. And you can be a part of shaping the future. It's blazetv.com/BNT. Charlie Kirk was assassinated simply for showing up and speaking on a college campus. So what does this say about where we are as a country when the free exercise of speech is now a life or death risk? David DeRogers, he's the president of Real Clear Foundation and the publisher of Real Clear Politics, and he joins us now. So David, it's good to see you. Unfortunately, under these circumstances, but we see, Charlie was martyred for free speech itself. So do you think this assassination will be remembered as an actual turning point in how America is going to treat dissenting voices, or are we still going to need more for a wake-up call?
Well, I hope we don't. I've been very pleasantly surprised at the reaction since his assassination. First of all, Charlie did die, but I do believe that the First Amendment, the rule of law, the glue that keeps us together, has been wounded. And we have to be very attentive to it. But I do think that, this assassin killed one of the conservative movement's best. And I do see that, when people are looking at who Charlie was, I mean, I think a lot of people started, having opinions about Charlie, but they weren't self-generated. They were given to them. They heard a friend talk about them, heard him talk up, heard him talk down. I think we're going through a re-examination of who he is. And I think that people are seeing what was truly there. A very special person who I think modeled, the First Amendment at its best. And I think, I've been very, very proud of the movement that he built, and also, the calm of the American people, where, there is calm. I mean, there's no burning of cities, there's no looting, there's no retaliatory violence. Everywhere you look, there's completely peaceful protest, and they're not even protests. They're really, they're having vigils.
Yeah, I love that point. You make this point in your piece, prove Charlie right, David. And the point about peaceful vigils instead of violent protests is just well said. I mean, and you also, I feel in this moment, people are looking for a cultural way to signal that they stand against this madness in some way. And I'm curious what else you've seen that you find interesting, because we really want to highlight that the right doesn't, as we've talked about before, the right doesn't go out and do violent protest things. Instead, they have prayer vigils. But there's a lot more that people want to do to signal that they're not part of this madness and this evil.
Well, the good news is I think they can follow Charlie's example, right? So I do think that a lot of young people really kind of looked at Charlie like he was a spectator sport. And I think the assassin, took that away from a lot of people. So I think what those folks have to do, they have to stop being a spectator, and they have to stand up. I was so happy to see the number of chapters that were established. I mean, if that isn't a sign that, the opposite has come from this assassin's bullet, I think people are going to stand up. These chapters, they're going to, follow Charlie's example. But, but I'm also, one of the things I'm concerned about is that, I think we've lost the plot line of what our country is. We can all say life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but we have to realize that there's guardrails for those pursuits, right? And the First Amendment is first for a reason, because it is that guardrail. But I really do think that, there's two different types of creeds that are displayed. There's Charlie's creed, which I think is the First Amendment and the law of toleration. And there's the assassin's creed. But I do think that, we've lost an appreciation of what the First Amendment is. But I mean, I think Jefferson, it would be useful for us to remind us of what he said. It's like, there's an openness in this country to ends. He said you can believe in one God, 20 gods, or no gods. But there wasn't, an ambiguity, an openness to every means in the pursuit of those ends. And, and what the real thing was, it's like you can't do certain things and you can't coerce people, right? You can't pick their pocket, make them pay for things that they don't believe in. And you can't break their bone. You can't force them to do things. And I think, we need to really relearn that. I mean, if you look at the polling on the First Amendment, it's in the doghouse. It's a doghouse, and it's keep on going down. With every graduating class, it gets worse. And it's because we're not teaching it anymore. If we're going to save this country, we're going to have to relearn that.
Yeah, Charlie was all about teaching the young people in this country what this country actually was. And we're all so very excited that TPUSA is more popular than ever. And it looks like, Charlie's critics are out there and they're trying to say he's so extreme. And it's like, no, he was not extreme. But you see now, and I think the numbers, they could change. I saw these a few days ago. He went from somewhere between 3 million followers to 11 million followers on Instagram. So more people now are going to see Charlie's message. I think it was our friend Peachy Keenan that wrote, everything that Charlie has said should be categorized so that people can go through and learn from Charlie step by step. So what kind of an impact is he still going to have, not only through Turning Point USA, but everything that he did was on camera. It's going to last for eternity, that people are still going to be able to learn from what he has already done here on this earth.
One of the points I kind of ended with is that, Charlie already lives in the clouds. I believe he's in heaven, but I know he's in the cloud. And one of the things I think would be a great kind of 2.0 expression of Charlie. I don't think there's a 2.0 expression of Charlie, but if really you could take that spirit, that discipline, that habit of mind, and give it an AI expression, right? So people could go through and obviously find old things, but the way that AI could summon his spirit and allow people to try to prove him wrong, but also to get inspiration to go out there and try to prove him right.
David, you live the First Amendment. I mean, this is something that you're not just pontificating about. This is what you do with your work at Real Clear Politics, both the site that people know and the foundation. You established a few years ago the Sums It Up Prize for journalism in this country, and that's an incredible event. You should talk to us a little bit about that, to the audience, and the real importance of implementing what we're talking about here in the media ecosystem.
Yes, I apologize for the name of it. It's kind of it's not an American name, and that was chosen purposely. It's a Russian term. Samostat means underground. And it was where, great books like the Gulag Archipelago came out. It's where the Soviet Union was shown to be the lie that it was. 3 years ago, when we established it, it really looked like the Overton window was closing on the First Amendment and really on this country and free speech. I mean, my own company found itself on a global disinformation list, whose purpose was to really deprive us of income because they wanted to shut us up. And our sin is that we showed two sides, right? So every year we honor, those people that are brave, that have stood up for the First Amendment, and there's no braver person. There's not a person who's paid the cause, and the price of the cause more than Charlie. And on February 11th, when we get together, we're going to do our best to remember him. And we're not going to forget him. I really do think he is the 21st century's, free speech martyr. And I think his legacy is going to be enduring. But I really do worry about the fact that half our country really has a problem with toleration, with the First Amendment. And, you kind of see what happens to Charlie's, and you look at, this Assassin's Creed versus Charlie's Creed. And, the Assassin's Creed is I don't think it's at the margins of our society. I think the people that will act on it are at the margins. But, people think it's okay to suspend morality, the rule of law, human decency, the First Amendment, and the pursuit of a moral good. It's the old idea that, it's as old as we've had political violence, that, the ends will the means. And until we shut that off, and I think we have to shut it off academically, culturally, economically. I mean, we can't accept this because it is a complete violation of toleration, right? And political toleration. And if we take this path and we let this grow, we can't have a country. And we have to really kind of get back to a political sense of self-limitations if we're going to be able to get to our 250th birthday and be any semblance of our origin story.
Yeah, with Charlie, we lost somebody who was an advocate for freedom of speech, conservatism, and obviously his faith. But when you look at Erica, she lost her husband. And I cannot believe that she was able to be so composed, so poised, just 48 hours or so later. And she came out and gave one of the most powerful speeches. My friends and I were just talking about it for the entire weekend, saying, this is a message that needed to be heard at this time. And she was absolutely in no position to be in front of the public needing to give a message at that point in time. And yet she still felt compelled to go out there and speak to these people. What is her message potentially going to be meaningful going forward in the way that she is going to be able to carry on Charlie's legacy?
It was one of the most noble, beautiful things I've ever seen. I mean, what an honor she is to herself, her children, but her husband. I think, everybody, when people, the choice to kill Charlie was a choice to kill, not just his role, on the chessboard of the present, but what really was his destiny. He was a knight when he was shot, but I think he was the only thing that was keeping him from becoming commander-in-chief someday was an age requirement and the opportunity. When she stood up there, I had a profound sense that, he will be remembered. His organization, it's to the degree that it's turning up, right? It's the growth. I mean, I think last I heard there was 37,000 chapters trying to be established. And, the funny thing is, it's like once upon a time, you wanted to establish a chapter on a college campus. There were the people that are the mandarins that are in charge of regulating speech, and they would greenlight you if you were an identitarian group, and they'd gaslight you if you were conservative. I think those days are over, and that these folks have to worry about a Justice Department that is watching, and students who are girded up and ready to do something better. But what a noble act, what a noble person. And, his memory, I think, and his purpose is in very capable hands.
Well, David, we are all grateful to you and your work for free speech and real clear politics. It's been great to have you on the show.
I hope to see you both in Palm Beach on February 11th for the Samizdat Prize.
David, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. When we come back, Donald Trump is going to be doing something brand new for the midterms next. Well, forget tradition. The GOP is calling an audible. For the first time, Republicans aren't waiting for a presidential race to hold a convention. They're going to hold one in the middle of the fight. They're going to call it a midterm convention. And Trump posted on Truth Social that the Republicans are going to do a midterm convention in order to show the great things that we have done since the presidential election of 2024. Time and place to be determined. Stay tuned. It will be quite the event. Very exciting. And I love it when he signs it, just in case you haven't been able to tell from all, he always does all caps and President Donald J. Trump. I love this idea, Matt, because one, a lot of people forget what happens in the midterms, and we see that things usually don't go well for the party in power in the midterms. And I don't know if you know this or not, but Donald Trump is quite the entertainer. He was a TV guy. He's a showman. He loves to put on a show. So you let him, and you can't take this out of the fact that this is his last go around, right? So he's like, I am going to have one more party, and everybody is hopefully going to vote for the Republicans again and keep this show going.
You get to 80, you get to throw some parties. You're president of the United States. Look, this is one of the better ideas I've seen. It brings back the joy, after a rough week. This is the kind of thing that Trump is so good at. And the Republicans, look, they face a big problem. It's not just, as you say, Jill, that during the midterms, people don't pay attention. Not as many people go out and vote. There's not a presidential election on. It's also that the Republicans still haven't fully reformed their party, right? This is the MAGA party now. And if Trump isn't on the ballot, it gets really dicey for Republicans. So this is a very smart move to say, no, this is in fact a vote for your favorite president. And it's also a great way to just focus attention on the midterms. I mean, it's one of the better ideas I've heard all year, where you're going to throw a party, you're going to have fun, you're going to have everyone give speeches. This base is still riled up. This base is still, people are paying a lot of attention after we've witnessed political assassination in our midst. And we want to say no to that. There's still a lot of problems. We're in an existential crisis in many ways. Putting the party on, making the case, this is a good idea.
I love it because we know how things work behind the scenes. When Trump put that out, there were thousands of people that were scrambling, going, oh, crap, what do we have to do now, right? What does the president just ask us to do? We're going to have to put a whole nother convention. Yeah. Mr. President, don't you know how long it takes to put together a convention? He's going to be like, just do it. It's fine. We'll figure it out. But place and time, we'll figure those little details out later. But I love that he's just like, this is something that needs to happen, and we're going to do it.
Yeah, it is something that needs to happen. They can highlight the successes, right, of the administration when they do this, and that's going to be a great thing. And they can also just make the case. And what you do is you make the elections national, right? That's what you have to do. And the reason that it's hard to get people to vote in the midterms is everyone votes for their particular members of Congress. A, people don't care about Congress. B, that's not necessarily in their minds tied to the big issues that they talk about all the time. Not the way it should be, but it's the way it is for most normal people. So you can not only make the case of what the president has done and what the administration has done to absolutely solve the border crisis when it comes to deportation and legal immigrants, everything they're doing there. When it comes to the redistricting the party has done, which has actually been very impressive. When it comes to all the measures on crime, things that are very basic that people care about, you can not only do that with a star-studded cast, right? You also make the mission of the midterms one thing. Like, you're going to vote, down the line, you're going to vote ours is going to be the message. And you're going to make a case for why you should do that. And so you nationalize the midterms in a way that bring more people out there to vote. And of course, I mean, I'm just stuck thinking, like, we need our friend Marsden and others here. I'm just thinking of all the creative things you could do at the midterm when it's not even presidential convention. So you're kind of free to throw whatever party you want with whoever you want and do whatever kind of fun stuff you want to do. I mean, this is fascinating.
There are no rules because it's never been done before. But you mentioned the border. I'm in for this because we're going to see Stephen Miller obviously on stage going through and telling the people, like he does, about what needs to happen at the border. And I see that the numbers are now up to 2 million people that have been deported since the start of Trump's presidency, which is a huge deal. And this obviously needs to keep continuing, and that number needs to keep growing. But it's not only just looking back at all the previous successes that the Trump administration has had, because they obviously have to look forward to 2028. And as we mentioned, Donald Trump can't run again. As the law is written right now, not allowed to do so, Matt. So when you look at this could be a fundraising boost and a way to just put out there with J.D. Vance and potentially others for that 2028 platform. And you just look at it and you go, okay, the GOP, we're going to bring everybody together, and that's always a good time to raise some money.
Oh, yeah. So the fundraising aspect of this would, of course, be huge. I think that at this point, people are energized enough where, they're going to watch if you make it entertaining. People are still engaged in, what this administration is doing. We just went through one of the most momentous election cycles in anyone's lifetime who's alive now. And so, this would solidify it and propels you forward with momentum, again, centralizing the narrative of what the midterm is about. And what it also does, Jill, which is, I think, very interesting, it presents the other side with, so the Democrats going to have a response? Are they going to have their own midterm convention? What's that going to look like? Can you imagine that cast of characters? I think that's good for the country. Let's put both parties on a national stage again, right? Let's see what they're both about. I think that's a great idea.
I think that the Democrats should just go through and try and hold their own midterms one right now. They're not even in power yet. But you know what? Let's just give America the absolute deciding factors that they want, where you get to go through and you get to see all the Democrats and their lunacy on display, and you get to see the Republicans and everything that Donald Trump has accomplished and will continue to keep pushing forward. Now, I will say Nashville was one of the finalists for the cities for the last RNC. There's a lot of if you're popular anywhere on the right, in the social Hollywood famous people circles, it's Nashville, Tennessee, because that's all the conservative country music artists that live there. Now, there are some liberals, they want to act conservative. They're not. But that's where they actually live. I would love to see that as a city, because Nashville is like one where all the Midwesterners go to just vacation. But it's a great city to host events. They know how to host events. So I wouldn't be surprised, at least early on, if that is one of the cities that we see in the running.
Yeah, I think Nashville would be a fantastic choice. And I mean, the main thing with something like this is you can't be boring. Like, Trump knows this, but the politicos don't. That they would make this very boring. We're going to have every single candidate come up and give a talk with no break, right? It has to be fun. It has to be exciting. So Nashville gives it a little bit of flair, where it could be very interesting. It's a great right-leaning. I mean, when everyone was migrating, for instance, across the country, right, from the coast, people like me leaving California, there was really two big options with a nod to Nashville. You either go to Texas, Florida, with a nod to Nashville in between. And of course, that's made Nashville very crowded, but that would be a perfect place for it. The key is it can't be boring. It's got to be a lot of fun. They have to have a lot of creative freedom with this to just do, a lot of things that should be done. I mean, I would give out awards. I'd have award ceremonies. I'd have lots of music. I'd be giving out awards to different people who've been canceled, different people who should be honored. There obviously should be, a lot about Charlie Kirk and his legacy and what we're doing with that moving forward at this. This is the kind of thing where you bring in all your stars. They become bigger stars because they're all together, and you put it together in an entertaining package. Trump knows this in his bones. I mean, it's one of his best qualities. People don't talk about this enough. Ronald Reagan was an actor. I mean, he knows media. So don't be boring, and it will be very successful.
We talk about this all the time. People on the right don't get together often enough. And this is going to be another opportunity for people to come and just be together one more time before we have to gear up for, are we even talking about another presidential election yet? Jill, calm down. We'll get there. I would also like to see, if we're going to be selfish here, we should at least advocate while we have a platform for Dallas, Texas, so that, it's right here in our backyard. Yes. Blaze Media is here. I think that's as good of a reason as any right now.
Dallas is let me make the case right now for the Trump team. Dallas is the largest red state metroplex. You already know it as an ATM of the Republican Party. Everyone comes through here to try to get all that money. But Dallas is big. It's going to overtake Chicago to be number 3 to New York and LA in terms of largest metroplexes in the country in the next few years. So huge, easy case to go to DFW and have it here. That would be a blast, and it would also make it very easy for Jill and I to be there.
First ever midterm convention, Dallas, Texas. It's not official, but when it is, we're going to go back and we're going to play this clip, and we're going to be like, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much. You know what? It's fun to think about, honestly, and we needed something fun this week to just... It's been such a difficult week for all of us. And, even us being lighthearted right now, it's only because the pain is still so real.
Yeah. And it's good to break it up with something like this. It's just a great idea. And, now is really about, in the work that I do, it's about getting ideas out there of what people should do individually after Charlie's passing, and also what we need to do as a country. And, that's the focus. And I will say, it's been heartening in the last, few days as this week unfolded to see so many people hard at work, both on this Blaze team. I'm telling you, they're doing an incredible job, not only just carrying on, but really pushing forward to do more excellent work. And that's the great thing about the right now. I just see a lot of people who are coming together to really do serious work and thinking very seriously about how to do what they do better, inspired by Charlie and his legacy.
Very well said. And that absolutely needs to happen. It needs to continue. It can't be something that we all talk about this week, and then it's a flash in the pan and it goes away. We will not let that happen here at Blaze Media. When we come back, Trump derangement syndrome. Leftists are still going crazy. We'll have your replies next. Well, lately, we've been told a lot about toning down the rhetoric, and we need to pay attention to the political climate. Senator Eric Schmidt posted on X, for those who don't understand the problem, ABC News says 87% of Democrats view Trump as a fascist. NPR, 47% of Democrats say the rise of fascism is their top political concern. And Rutgers, 55% of Americans on the left believe assassinating Trump would be at least somewhat justified. So I posted the question on X today. Leftists believe what the left-leaning outlets are telling them. So what is the first step to cure our fellow citizens of Trump derangement syndrome? And Dangerous Thoughts starts us off with one of my favorites. He says that we need to get them all they live glasses and allow them to see reality. Now, this is a movie that one of my friends, it was probably, I think it was in COVID, was the first time that I watched this, and they're like, you haven't seen this movie? It is a cult classic, and if you know, you know.
Yeah, so you can all of a sudden see the reality around you in that movie. It's a pretty scary reality that he sees. It's an interesting analogy because you really do have people who live in the matrix. I mean, they've been taught to see things a certain way. They accept what they hear from the media, but really they've been taught from the time that they were, in grade school, Jill, who the good and bad guys are and how to think about these things. And it's an enormous problem. It's an enormous problem because they really see the world in a fundamentally different way than the rest of us.
And Trumpet Tiger replied, determine which ones are reachable and which ones are too far gone. A good benchmark is their reaction to Charlie's assassination. Some who've had strong Trump derangement syndromes has come down out forcefully against it, and they realize what time it is. That is a very important point because there are going to be those that you can fight for and still win hearts and minds, and there are going to be some that are way too far gone in this political climate. It's unfortunate, but that is just the reality of the situation.
Yeah, I think the Tiger reply is a good one. I mean, that is a good litmus test. If you can't come out and unequivocally condemn this political assassination, then you have much deeper problems and you're much more unreachable. But when you do see some honest libs, like a lot, and I've been surprised. There's a lot of people who did come out and unequivocally condemn this, of course, like all decent Americans should. That's someone you could actually have a conversation with, right? That's someone that Charlie could have had a conversation with and argued with, and that's important.
I'm going to drop the Tiger reply in a sentence later today. I promise you, before the end of the day, I'm going to use that. The Tiger reply. I really liked that. Let's go ahead and get to Luke, who wrote, truth. The truth is always the answer to lies. Now, that is simple, but not easy, as Ronald Reagan always used to say. That is, it seems like very obvious. We don't live in obvious times. Unfortunately, we have to go through and show people the truth because some people out there matter. Like, no, this is my truth. I'm living my truth. And that whole thing just gets distorted beyond belief.
Yeah, and here the truth is really just, the simple part of the truth is, okay, what's a fascist, right? What's fascism? What is that?
Donald Trump.
How do we define that?
Obviously.
And right. So that you have to define what you're even talking about when you say that, and then does that apply to Donald J. Trump? So you would have to actually have an intellectual discussion about what these words mean, but really what they mean for most people is he's the bad guy, and a lot of things are justified to take down the bad guy because what they mean by fascism is this is someone who's going to destroy America, right? They think that the TDS people with the syndrome, they think that Trump is going to actually destroy the system, the Republican system of government in America. And that is something that does need to be combated by everyone with the truth.
So, Matt, what you're telling me is that if I go to college or high school or anything, that I actually have to learn something. I actually have to learn the difference between capitalism, socialism, communism, fascism. What? I'm sorry, Matt. That seems like a very huge hurdle to cross. And I don't know if our universities can even teach the difference between those two, or four, I guess, in that case. But when you look at it, it's the media, it's the educational systems. They all come together in unity to produce whatever it is that we see where all these people from ABC and Rutgers and NPR believe that Donald Trump is a fascist.
Right. I mean, all these institutions that you just read, they're all part of this complex, and there is no solution. There's no way around saving America unless you fundamentally rebuild media and education, because these are the things that shape us. So when you have the schools as rotten as they are for this long, if you do not go in there and root out this stuff, make sure that none of our tax dollars are going to it anymore, and there's still billions of dollars going to this garbage and these institutions that are fully rotted. You don't get rid of those people. You don't start training new teachers who are actually going to teach people how to think and love their country. You can't survive as a nation. I mean, I saw this like 10, 15 years ago. I was going throughout the country evaluating American history programs. And so I tested, thousands of teachers and students. And what we saw over and over again was the complete breakdown of civic education in this country. We've known that's happening. You can't have a republic unless you fix that problem. And it's not only that problem, because once you leave school, right, whenever you leave for the rest of your life, you hear all these things from media that flow at you. So unless you have an alternative media, you can't win either. So it's not like a matter of like, oh, we have to fight, the New York Times and fight the universities. No, we have to replace them. We have to fully reform them, or we don't win. This continues. There's no way around that. And in the first part of my life, I thought, well, I could go help, change education, and realize, well, you're not going to do that unless you're on the board of trustees. If you're a professor, you're not going to change anything. And then in media, it's even more exciting because it's easier, I think, to move about the cabin and change things and build new things. But media, education, those form people, you don't change them fully, you don't save the country. Period.
No, and I went to college. I remember what my professors were like. There is no saving those people. But Matt, you're telling me Donald Trump is not a fascist? Is that what we're learning today? Oh my gosh, it's not true.
I mean, this idea that Trump is Hitler. Trump is the worst Hitler ever. He's a terrible Mussolini. He's a terrible Hitler. He's really bad at his job because he's not that. And what is astounding, of course, is the projection here. I mean, fascism is when you start to use all the corporations, right, under the head of the state and you start to bring them into the state and make them state run and make them do things. Like, who is sending the FBI to Twitter to tell people what to post and what not to post? Who is putting pressure on Facebook with the direct force of the federal government to censor speech? Like, we know who the bad guys are here. So this is one of those cases of projection, but it's exceedingly dangerous because you really do have a lot of people out there, especially educated people, who throw around these words and act like Donald Trump is going to destroy Republican government as we know it.
I'm old enough to remember President Joe Biden standing in front of that bright red backdrop who is saying the MAGA is the most dangerous people in the country.
Ultra MAGA.
Ultra MAGA. That's right. Ultra MAGA.
Ultra MAGA.
Going back, I forgot about Ultra MAGA. How dare I forget about that? But we're telling everybody, oh no, Donald Trump, he's the problem. Joe Biden, he was totally fine. You know what? Might not have been completely there, but he would have been fine at that point in time. Seems a little off.
Yeah, and we're going to have to walk back the extremism on that side and sort of cut it off and deny it any air, because we can't keep throwing around these words. It will lead to violence. It would lead to more violence.
Just want to scream fascism at this point in time. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.